strategy,
design,
marketing,
UX,
digital.
development.
This is Agencies That Build, the show dedicated to leaders and teams that design and deploy in the digital world. My name is Casey. I'm a former coder and agency owner.
And I'm Varun, a better coder and an agency partner.
Better? It's probably true. This show is sponsored by Galaxy.
On a mission to help agencies grow.
I had to hit the button, Varun, because otherwise the show was going to happen before we hit record. It was awesome conversation beforehand. Well, who's our guest today? He is amazing. He's a true leader. He's an entrepreneur. He's a coach, strategic business development aficionado. I don't know where that came from, but I'm finding out that's pretty true from just the few conversations I've had. His company, they use tech to serve the purpose of marketing. They make it happen. 2020 is the 30th year as an agency, managing partner, president at MC2 Design Group. Michael Coogan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. What
Man.
did you say, aficionado?
Yeah. You know, sometimes I write this and sometimes people put it down for me but I agree. You're aficionado, man. Well, let me talk less. This is our leadership series. Let me pass you this thing. Okay, it's kind of heavy, but
all right, hold on.
Here you go. You got it?
Okay.
There you go. All right, take Thor's hammer, smash for us some kind of myth, bogus strategy, misconception, set the record straight once and for all.
All right, so I got a couple, and these apply to me, but I think they apply to other people as well. I think a myth that a lot of people have, and it's a kind of a culture thing, that you have to have gone to college or finished college to be successful in business or be a successful entrepreneur. You know, it's like, I don't think Bill Gates or Steve Jobs actually finished school, you know, and I think they're sort of successful. You know, I don't want to say that I am not pro learning, because I think learning is super, super, super important and all of that. I think that, you know, what was that Mark Twain quote? I never let school interfere with my education. You know, it's like that. You know, the thought of just, you know, being a lifelong learner and moving forward, right? You know, I think the Fast Company talked about the average CEO reads like 50 or 60 books a year. I think Bill Gates said one time that he reads like 50 books a year. So like, learning is something we should all be doing all the time, right? You know, there's that, you know, that statement, readers are leaders, leaders are readers. You know, it's like, if we want to continue to grow and improve, we have to be consuming content and have a desire to learn and get better. And so that's a super important part of it. We don't necessarily have to have some letters behind our name to be able to be smart, right? Or to be able to be successful. And so, you know, for a lot of people, college might be the right track. You know, I hope that my dentist or my surgeon has gone to college and learned some things about, you know, some techniques before they start, you know, getting on me. But there's a lot of careers, and I think most careers, you know, probably more of a vocational track, right? Like, if you just get into it, you like it, you start working, you start learning, and that's when you become really effective. I think in our industry, particularly, like, the web developers who like do it for fun and did it as kids, you know, like those guys really are just passionate about it, and they dig in and they learn. The designers that are just naturally creative. A lot of times in our interviews, when we're interviewing somebody, we ask that question, like, what do you do for fun? And if we're hiring them for a creative position, if they do creative things for their hobbies, for their enjoyment, then I know that they're really going to be passionate and good creators within our organization. You know, if they're web developers and they've got these side web projects that they're excited about and passionate about, or things that they're doing, then you know that they're really wired to do it, and it's you know, it's a good career for them. And so I'm a fan. I mean, Mike Rowe and all his vocation, blue collar kind of stuff. Like, you know, I think we need to probably create more systems that are more vocational training for education, and less let's leave school, not really know what we're going to do, not get a job in our degree, and have a massive amount of debt. I think that that's a recipe for, you know, an uphill climb for a lot of folks. So that's kind of my take on that. The other one is that,
well, hold on a second. I love, by the way, that is so true. That Mark Twain quote, fantastic. But it was funny because, like, you don't necessarily need to have letters behind your name. In your virtual background, you literally have letters right behind you. But that being said, right, there's learning, and then there's education, and sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not. Do you read a lot yourself?
I do. I probably consume in that 50 to 60 books a year range. I do read physical books. Like, I don't know if I got this virtual thing. So it starts. So like, I like to read physical books because I like to mark them up
Oh,
and
hell
I
yeah.
get the Post-it
Which one is
notes.
that?
This is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Yeah, I know
So
Keith. Yeah, he's a good
yeah,
dude.
yeah. So uh, you find a good book and then it becomes a great manual or reference tool for later. Like, if you're creating any content too, you're like, man, I know somebody said something about this. I need to get some insights on it. uh, one of the things I love about books is that it allows us, particularly if you find, really good, authors or business people or whatever it is, it allows us to actually enter into some kind of mentorship a little bit with these people without physically having to know, be in their proximity or actually knowing them.
Mm-hmm.
I love leadership stuff. I'm a John Maxwell certified coach, and so like, John Maxwell, even though I have met him in person a couple of times, like he to me is like a mentor because of all these books and, I hear his voice in my head,
Yeah.
when I'm reading books and, like I think Keith Cunningham from just business advice is probably one of the best out that exists out there, just because it's just so practical and pragmatic. It's, he buys and sells businesses for breakfast, so he's got, he has so much experience that, and then he writes his books in a way that like every chapter is like a standalone piece of, content that you can take and consume and help. So
Have you ever done one of his events?
I have not.
Okay.
I know about them, but I have not done any of his events. They seem really interesting,
Yeah, I haven't either, but even hearing you talk more about him, it's like, yeah, that's a great reminder of like just getting some education time with some of the greats here. I
So
first saw him at Tony Robbins. He was basically doing like, this is all the accounting you're ever gonna need to know as a business leader in the next
Yeah.
4.5 hours. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, Keith's
So
a great guy.
I have a question for both of you. Like,
Yeah.
since you brought up the point on learning and reading books, right? Yes, it's key. Like every leader, everyone, like they talk about reading more and more and keep learning. The challenge I see, with many people in general is that how do you retain the information? I saw in your books, like you put a lot of post-it notes.
Mm-hmm.
So as a tactic, like, do you refer them again and again? So when someone is going to write about something, then it makes sense, right? For them
Right.
to, make a note on those points that you want to bring up in your writing. But when you are just reading for the sake of learning and enhancing your knowledge, over time, it's natural for people to start forgetting. So how do you make sure that
Yeah.
you remember all that stuff that you learned?
Well, I don't, Casey, do you want to take a
No,
crack at this point?
I retain Jack. So you.
Yeah. So I kind of approach it a couple of different ways, right? With anything, right? It's the more time you spend in the seat, more seat time. So it's like, if you find a book that kind of connects with you and the way the author writes or the content that's in it, like, I think it's foolish to only read it once. There's a great book by Henry Cloud called Integrity and the Courage to Meet the Demands of Reality. And it's just about living life in the right way and doing business in the right way and understanding the wake that you leave. But I make a point of reading that book every year, just because it's a good reminder of things. And so if there's a good book, like, I do go back to it, especially if I make notes. So I read books a few different ways. Like, I do a lot of audio books through Audible, and then I have physical books too. So if I'm interested in a book, I tend to probably download the Audible copy of it first. And so I create systems for myself to be productive. So you get in a good book and you're listening to it from an audio standpoint, and you stop it, you're like, man, I want to continue on. So what I've done is, instead of, when I work out in the mornings and I work out at my home, I'm kind of a home setup here, I don't listen to music. I listen to audiobooks when I work out. So one, I only listen to that book while I'm working out. So
Really? Okay.
So I'm motivated to go work out because I want to pick up where that book left me off the other day. And then while I'm working out, while I'm listening to the book, it makes the workout go by faster.
Yeah.
So it serves a double purpose for me in doing it that way. I also will listen to another audio book only in my car. So even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or when I'm driving, I'm listening to an audiobook in my car. I sometimes listen to music in the car, but that way too, that I'm just trying to capture all of those times that you're normally wasting just collecting content. And then I'm like, if I really like the content, I'll buy the physical book and I'll read it. I'll take notes. I'll post it up, and, I'll sometimes put notes in it, take notes and put them in Evernote. But most of the time, there's a dozen or so kind of core books that I might refer to in a season, and they're usually all within arm's reach. I have 5 or 6 books that are right here within arm's reach, and if I didn't have this virtual background on, you'd see kind of the ones that are on the shelf behind me. And I cycle those ones in and out. It's not for show. Those are like kind of the things that I'm working through or processing, or content that I want to take in. And so those are kind of moved to the front of the closet, so to speak. I've got another bookshelf where all the archive stuff goes, but it's just, you have to just spend time in it. Right. And if you're not, some people need to stop and take notes. And, I think it's important that you carve out that time. I mean, 15 minutes a day reading. I think that the average, I think 27% of the population doesn't read any books at all.
Really?
Right? Yeah. And so if we spent 15 minutes a day just reading on some topic we want to get better on, and took a couple of notes. So what's this mean to me? How can I apply this today? Or how can I apply this week? To use some application tactics, that compounds over time. And we do that for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. All of a sudden people think, man, you're a genius. How'd you get so smart? 15 minutes a day, John Maxwell talks about just like the hour a day, an hour a day, 5 days a week, you'll be an expert in anything. And but it's about taking the discipline to carve that out. And we all waste a ton of time doing stupid stuff that we could replace it with things that would help us grow in our knowledge and our wisdom and how to operate in life. We just have to say yes to something and say no to something, right? We have to give something up, right? It's, let's watch one less episode of The Office or whatever that is we're watching on TV, and spend that time reading a book. Instead of watching 2 hours of TV, watch 1 hour of TV at night or whatever that is. But it's, it's about like what's important to you, what's important to you in the long run. And it's long-term thinking. All of this stuff compounds, right? You're working towards your own personal development, working on your own skill sets as a developer, as a designer, as a marketer, whatever those are. Like, it might not seem like you're getting any traction in the moment, but then you have you look back at some point in the future and you're like, wow, man, I actually kind of know a few things, or look what I've accomplished, or look what I've done. It's, it's just, it's about the law of compounding, just consistency over time. And at some point you look back and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And that plays out in everything, right? In relationships, in business, in finance, that law of consistency and compounding like works in our advantage if we understand it, and we just commit to some level of intention, 5 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever it is, over time. At some point, we'll be able to look back and say, hey, look at all of this wealth of knowledge, or wealth of wealth, or these relationships that I have grown, and what I have. And that just comes from just, doing stuff with consistent action over time.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome. I mean, strong points.
Yeah.
Can I extract your top 3 books you're reading right now, or that classic Tim Ferriss question is what book would you gift somebody?
Yeah, The Road Less Stupid to any business owner. Well, I always tell people, you need to get this book and you need to read it. And I already mentioned the other one, Integrity by Henry Cloud, I think is a transformative book. It really is just, giving us a great picture on what it looks like to live a life of integrity, and what that looks like in business, and, having this kind of transcendent kind of thinking of, making things better in the process, thinking about the wake we leave behind, as we know, are we leaving a good wake or a bad wake? I mean, those are definitely probably some of my top 2. I think for any leader who, I see a lot of business owners who are good tacticians, like they know how to do something really good, and they want to be self-employed, but there's some like leadership things that they need to work out. Because if we're going to grow a business, we need to lead people. And, so anything John Maxwell is going to help you. I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. Just starting at the basics of developing the leader within you 2.0 by John Maxwell, I think is a great book. Even if you have some leadership skills, just some of that reminder of foundational elements, right?
Yeah.
About communication and setting vision and, trust and serving and all those things as a leader in leadership. We look at I like the analogies to professional athletes. The guys that are at the top of their game, right? I don't know if you're a Dodgers fan or not. I'm
What
not
team?
particularly. What's that?
What team?
Dodgers?
The Dodgers.
Oh, I thought they were in the
team?
minor league. They didn't get shot back down.
Okay. All right, I see where you're going. But you look at a guy like Mookie Betts, right? Mookie
Right.
Betts, who's like, a superstar. He's an awesome guy, but like he is known for doing the basics, right?
Yeah.
You look at the guys that play at the high level in any sport, they'll be out shooting free throws or they'll be out chipping, or putting or whatever. Like it's the foundational things of just doing those things over and over and over. Even after they have made it, they're still working on those foundational elements to be successful. And I think John Maxwell does an exceptional job with his books of helping you with the foundational things as a leader to help you move your business forward.
Mm-hmm. Man, good list.
Yeah.
Good list. In what I love about this is, not all books are fantastic, but when you listen to people you respect and trust, and they're telling you, man, this book is it, you go get it. I just found integrity on Audible just now as you were saying that. It's like, and that is more golden than honestly a lot of most of the universities or colleges these days. I'm a little biased, but back to your original myth. And anyways, you don't need the school, but you learn.
The one piece what you were just saying is that about reading books with anything, right? It's kind of like eating at the buffet. You go into the buffet and there's all this food there, right?
Yeah.
And you have all these options and you're moving through it, but you're going to pick what fits your appetite or your diet or what's required for you at that moment.
True.
I always encourage that with books too, right? Not every author has everything figured out, but you're going to find little pieces, within that book that fit your appetite, that fit, what you're looking to consume and need for whatever you're trying to accomplish at that moment. Sometimes it's garbage, right? They're like you said, not every book is great, but you might get one good thing out of a book, but there's some other things where you're reading a book, you have to recognize that is garbage. I don't need to take that in. I can leave that aside, but this little piece here I can put on my plate. And so it's just having the wisdom and discernment to do that as you're reading and consuming content. Unfortunately, we allow too much garbage to get into our lives.
It's true, man. It's true. But the fact that, it's almost like when the student is ready, the teacher appears, that there's that book, maybe you read it or you're like, it wasn't really fit. But then there's that book where you're like, oh, I've recently been challenged with integrity challenges, people wanting me to not do that. Like that book is now, and this is the perfect time. I heard this on the podcast. I'm gonna go get it. Or maybe for people not right now, but then it's like in their head. And then later on when it's the right time, it's a good point about not trying to cram some. Yeah, I really want to eat some crab rangoon, but let me go get some salad first. Like, no, get what you want to get at that buffet.
Yeah.
And
just a little note about the reading thing too, is that, I talked about reading books over and over again. Like you're a different person a year later or 2 years later or 3 years later, and you read a book again, right? You're going to look at it differently and it's going to impact you in a different way. So it's actually a different book. Yeah. Right. Even though it's the same book, if you read that book a few years later again, it's actually a different book because now you have 3 years or 2 years or whatever that time span of experience that has changed you into a different person. So you're going to have a different filter upon which you consume the content of that book.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Boom. There it is. Should we just call it a day?
Call it a day. Smash it.
It's time to roll up our sleeves, Varun. Time to roll them up.
You roll them up. Okay, hold on.
Oh yeah, Michael, get those. At one time, the first time I did this, I had like a short sleeve shirt on, so it did not work.
Roll up your sleeves. So
I did. I still rolled them up.
Okay, here we go. We're ready to go.
Oh yeah.
Do you wear long sleeve shirts now every time so that this part of the podcast makes sense?
I do. It's dedication to the art, So really wanted to get practical and tactile and talk about some different best practices you recommend, maybe approaches your team takes when it comes to the ideas of the design, the build, and the deploy. So, I mean, talk to us about the work that happens before you sit down with someone, the discovery, the phone calls, the conversation, that data gathering. Is there certain best practices you have for how to make that design, really sing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I think every agency, and I feel like we're constantly evolving that. Like, how can we
Yeah.
get better? It's one of the things that we try to always do is how can we be as much of a frictionless engagement with our clients as possible? And there's this tendency to put what work do you put on the client? What work do you take on? And if you take it on, how do you do it in a way that's not just a big time sink for you, and you're still managing margins and things of that nature. We're a StoryBrand certified agency, and so a big part of what we do is about messaging. We've won some awards around the design of what we do. We've got incredible creatives on our team. And, for us, it's super important that as a marketing agencies or as businesses, it's super easy to build the list of what you need to do. Hey, you need a website, you need a logo, you need a brochure, we need to do this for this trade show, we need to do the social media stuff. But where a lot of people fall short is they fail to spend the time they need on what to say. And when you dial in the what to say, then the what to do becomes much more effective. And that old adage of 50% of every marketing dollar works, you just don't know which one does. We can kind of throw that out the window because you start to be able to see your website convert, your social media, converting, your digital ads converting, because you've really connected and nail the words down. And that's where we start almost everybody with kind of a messaging session about who are you and what is it that you do for your customers? What's the problem that you solve? Working through a discovery of identifying some aspects of the framework that fall into the StoryBrand framework and help them really clearly and consistently and confidently communicate their message. Quite frequently, you go into an organization, and if I was to silo people out in the office and say, what do you do? And I talk to 7 people, I get 7 different answers. And there's just always a lot of confusion amongst people. And so when you can get people to clarity, there's unity, and the business starts to really click and really move forward. And so in a process, we always try to start there, even if it's a web project, and we do a lot of web work. They come to us for web work. Like, we make sure that there's that component of messaging in it through that process of, the project, because we can make you a beautiful, well-functioning website, but if it doesn't say the right words to your customers, then you've just wasted your money. And for us as business owners, my business partner and I, we own other businesses outside of this. We've been very entrepreneurial over our lives. We get what it's like to write the checks. We know what it's like to write a check for an expense. And it's like, I want to put the customer in a place, our clients in a place to where they're stoked to write the check to us because they see the value that they're getting in return. And so much of what we do is about building that, trying to figure out what that value is. And if we can't bring value, if for some reason I don't feel like we're a fit, we will pass on the work. It's not that. I'd much rather have the right kind of relationships where we're a good team, because it really is a partnership. When an agency interacts with a client, I don't like the vendor-client relationship. We're now in a partnership. We are now a team to help your company become more successful. And that means we have to actually like each other, kind of philosophically be aligned. We have to be excited about what you do, or at least feel confident and comfortable in marketing what you do. Otherwise, we're not going to give our best effort. There has to be a level of trust. And even though if that lasts for 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years or whatever that is, that's where the successful relationships come from. And you need to not make us order takers. We need to be a part of your process and thinking, so that you don't come to us with a half-baked idea that then we have to either try to unravel or you force us to execute on. That we're part of you helping. We're part of the conversations in helping our clients bake the ideas. And so that what we're doing is going to be the most effective for them. We find that those are the most valuable relationships. And I was talking to somebody else the other day. I don't know the statistics in our industry, but my thought is like, there's client turnover is maybe 3 years, 4 years, but when we've got clients that have been with us for 10, 12, 15, 20 plus years, like multiple clients that have been with us for years that we continue to do the marketing for, which to me is a testament of that relationship building and of creating value and being partners. And that's the kind of clients we're looking to build. We're not looking to do this massive land grab and get every project we can get. We're looking to find the right kind of clients that can be partners with us, we can be teammates with, and that we can get deep and wide with them and help them grow. So I know it was a systems question. I mean, the classic politician not answering the question I was asked, answering the question I want to answer.
I'll try to be more specific. So you are looking, you're saying it from the leadership's perspective, from your agency owner's perspective, that this is what your agency does. Like in the discovery process, you try to understand your clients better, their needs, what they're trying to do, and then how you'll get them done is the for later. But right now, you need them and yourself to understand what they are trying to do. Now, so you have been in this business for 30 years, right? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Right. So when you started this, right, and this is for smaller agencies, like when you are small, when you are mid-size, it's not always the case. You are the one who is going to talk to the client, right? You are the one who has to acquire that knowledge and experience to help client understand their business better. And you need to put yourself in their shoes and then try to look at from their perspective, so what they're trying to achieve. Now, when you are at this stage, when you are an agency owner, you are not really doing the work right now. You have your team who does the work. So how do you transform that knowledge and so that you are out of it and your team can start doing it, right? I mean, at this point, you are basically relying on your team to help them, help their clients or your clients.
Right.
So is there any tactics that you have followed, like where your team does an amazing job with the clients to solve this?
I mean, all of the awesome work that happens from our agency comes from the team. I pretty much get paid to talk now. So, and even though I started in this business as a web developer, I'm a terrible web developer. And so I've hired talented people that are much smarter than me. It was a hobby that I turned into a business, and then, hired people to actually do the real work. Now the way that we hand that stuff off is that we've tried to hire people on our team that even regardless of the skill sets, that we feel we could put them up in front of the client and talk to the client. So we don't have a lot of gateways between, like, I try to remove myself out of, after the initial conversations when we're engaging with a client and doing discovery about a technical project. Like Josh, our director of web development, he's in that meeting. We just had one of those yesterday. So I might be there, he might not be there. So there's like this handoff. But philosophically, all our teams all on the same page. So, we're not a huge team. There's 14 of us in the office. But we've done a good job of hiring what I think is the best of the best in our area, and with key specialties that then they get pulled into the meetings. So we try to have a lot of transparency, and we also, if the client needs to have a conversation with the web team or the creative team, they're going to have a conversation with the creative team, and it's not like a lot of go-betweens to make that happen. So that the pass off of the information and what we're doing with the clients, there's usually some meeting in between intake and when it becomes a real project, where I'm in the meeting or my business partner's in the meeting, and we're making introductions and we're creating value and we're sharing information, and then as far as just like systems things, look, so we use ClickUp as our PM tool. I don't know if it's a fairly new tool, but it's super flexible. It has a lot of automations and AI in it that we really like.
Is that the free one?
They have a free version.
Okay.
We pay for a pay version. We came over from Liquid Planner. We were using Liquid Planner as our tool.
Yeah.
And we really liked it because it had predictive project management in it, which is tough to kind of, line your stuff up. But it was too heavy for our agency. And I always say, what's the best system or the best product is the one that your team will actually use. Yeah. And so trying to find a product. So ClickUp seems to be a good source for us now. So everything gets documented in there, what we're doing for the client, the deliverable, the outcomes. So, any discovery documents. So one of the cool things about COVID is going to virtual meetings. It's way easier to document your meetings. So recording a Zoom call, right? So every Zoom call that we come off of, that goes right into a folder that people can listen back through or watch back through the Zoom meeting and get up to speed. We also will send it to Timmy and get the transcript of it. So there's a written transcript of that Zoom call, so people can pull the notes out of what's going on in the meeting. So I'm a terrible note taker. I like to be very conversational in my meetings, and I want to be listening and not taking notes. And so now what I've even done, I said, hey, if I'm in a face-to-face meeting with a client, can I record this? And then I use an app called Otter, which is the same kind of thing. It records the call and it transcribes on the fly on the phone. And so if there's something was said, I can scroll back and see what it was, but also then I have that transcription for later that I can outline some notes or hand it off to somebody if they're going to quote from that conversation or whatever. So that's kind of our process of how we hand that all off. To be honest, we have gone 30 years with, I use this analogy a lot. We have built the airplane as we've been flying it. So I am not a systems guy. We have a few people now that are stronger at systems. So I have always just winged it, and it's not been the greatest, but we've managed to grow our business with more of a like, hey, this time we're going to do it this way, or this time we're going to do it that way. It works for me, but I realize that is not a duplicatable system for our team. So 2020 has really been about us kind of identifying where our systems are weak, where we need improvement, where do we need more automation, things of that nature. And we've been working on putting a lot of those things in place so that, and we're starting to be able to see the fruits of that labor of where, people can take a project from the beginning to the end. So not every project comes through me. Like there are times I'm like, I'll see something, I'm like, wow, we did that. Awesome. Someone else has had that conversation. That project's come in and gone through our entire system, and I never once had to touch it, or my business partner, Brian, has never once had to touch it. And we're really trying to build that team, the hit by a bus thought process, right? If I was to get hit by a bus tomorrow, what impact does that have on our business? And like identifying those things and then making sure you've trained people or create systems in those things so that one person's not dependent on the flow of being successful and helping clients be successful with the outcomes of their projects.
One thing that got me curious when you said, like, you've been in business for 30 years, you have a team of 14 people. So usually when you are in business for so long, you grow significant amount of employees, right? Maybe that was never your goal. You never wanted to grow a big company. You wanted to revenue, whatever the purpose was. Have you always been at like that scale, or have you worked with other people like contractors, vendors who you partner up with? Like what was the strategy? Because 30 years is a long time, right? So I'm just curious to what was your strategy all along to
we may touch on this later a little bit, but I'll touch on it now since you're asking the question. So part of the reason that we've been as big as 17 people, and then with COVID we trimmed a little bit. So we've kind of fell back a little bit to the core team we have now, which a lot of businesses have had to do, and that was like no fun at all having to do that. We've recently offered a position back to one of those people that we laid off just because things are rebounding a little bit for us out here. The third quarter was just super flat. So I owned a different company. So I actually joined MC2 17 years ago, and I owned another firm. And so my business partner started MC2 in 1990 with another gentleman. So, in 1990, websites weren't even a thing, right? It started out as just your typical graphic design shop. And when
it was like AOL back then, right? It was like, what's your AOL keyword?
Yes, exactly. So, when you got all the AOL CDs in the mail all the time to create accounts. So I started as a web developer early on. So in the late 90s, messing around with this thing called HTML, and it was kind of interesting and fun. And that's kind of how I got into business, because I realized that, hey, I think people are going to need these. Businesses are going to need these. It's going to be like the business card of the future. That was like kind of my thought back then. And that's what kind of launched the idea of getting into the business. So we were actually competitors, and then I think we're in a small market. Technically, we're in a regional small market. We're north of Sacramento. Our the population of our town is 100,000 people. It's pretty rural. So, you get the work that you get. You end up in a lot of verticals. So if we were in Sacramento or San Francisco, I think there's more opportunity and more growth, and we did work on trying to pull in clients. So that was a lot of it. It was more of a slow burn. And then when I joined forces with the team and we started rethinking about what we were going to do and kind of expanded our services and, started deciding, actually off the back end of the recession in 2008, 2009, in that middle of that recession, my business partner and I said, hey, are we in this? We call it the come to Jesus meeting.
Yeah.
Where we're just like, are we all in, or is like, hey, are we just going to wrap this up and go figure out something else to do? Because, everybody was struggling during that recession. And our team at that time, I think, was 5 people. Like, it was just, and so for a long time, it was just, you were talking, Varun, about when you started a business. For way too long, as the business owners, we were the business owners and the doers. You did the sales, and then you did the PM, and then you did the design, the web development. Like, it's like, you're in the middle of all of it, then you're doing the billing and, all those things. And, a few other people that you have on staff and a few other contractors here and there that you're helping with a design project here and, a design project there. And decided that we were going to kind of push all the chips in and just really, leverage some things we had to our advantage. And one of those was that we always have run really super lean as a company. We've done our best to keep stupid expenses low. Our biggest expense is always going to be labor.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you a mindset shift. We always, so this is, 12, 15 years ago, we were like being the cheapskate business owners. I'm just going to say it. Like, how can we get the cheapest labor, cheapest people to get the work done?
Sure.
And it impacted our ability. We didn't realize that ultimately we were getting what we paid for, and it impacted our ability to grow. And so when we decided, you know what, we're tired of these, dimwads that we're hiring. Let's spend the money and let's try to hire the best of the best. And the productivity was like 5 to 10 fold, and the quality was 5 to 10 fold. And like, so over the last 10 years, we have grown 25% a year over the last 10 years. So, and so much of it was around changing the quality of the person that we hired. It was like spending the money to get the right kind of people on the team was like the game changer for us. And it helped Brian and I, my business partner and I, do what we've always wanted to do. And that was to get out of the way of the business. We didn't have to do certain things anymore. We were able to actually work on the business more and work in the business less. And have really great people that could help accelerate the growth of our company and the quality of the work that we've done. And so Varun, to go back to your question, we've never really wanted to be this big, like, super agency. It's like, what's that fine line between having like a really great team that can handle all the needs of your clients in-house if you need to, but can help facilitate bigger projects through outsourced partners, whether they be, onshore or offshore, or whatever that is, to be able to take advantage of opportunity and minimize the overhead that you need. So when the economy turns down, got 40 people that you've got to manage.
True.
And, and just find that kind of happy balance, So sometimes you think, oh, it'd be great if we had more people. Sometimes you think it'd be great if we had less. You just have to think, but it's about that kind of fine line between, this is the kind of work we want to do. This is the kind of clients we want to work with. This is the kind of people we want to have on our team. And what's that balance of numbers to quality of execution? And, I actually think that 20 number, 20, where we are to 20, like, that's a sweet spot. Like, you can have all the skill sets covered with some cross training, utilize other partners, and really be able to make be profitable, do some really great work, be competitive in bigger markets because you've got some quality team players, and not look big enough and not look too small, and all those things that every agency is always worried about.
Yeah. So one thing, I just want to make sure I heard correctly. You said you do work with the contractors,
We
or
do.
you do, right?
Yep, we
So
do.
yeah, so just want to make sure. So you do. That's how you find the right balance, right? When you
Right.
want to scale up and down, you don't have to fire away a lot of people when the things are not going well.
Yep.
So
Like just give you an idea for us, like we don't do any markup. We do all the
yeah,
creative. We make
yeah,
all the notes about the product. We always send markup out. So all the,
yeah,
CSS, HTML, we always send the markup out. Sometimes it'll come back and our dev team will do the deployment of that markup on a platform. Sometimes we'll
yeah.
use an outsourced provider to do that for us, or it'll be a hybrid of work of that nature.
And that also helps you with being competitive, right? Because
Right.
when you're looking at other people, similar agencies, how do they, like, I mean, in today's world, in your opinion, how many people really want to do everything in-house? Do you think that's the mindset, or do you think people are getting more open to
Yeah.
work with more contractors, nearshore, offshore, or
Yeah.
just, there's people available everywhere. It's a
Yeah.
global economy.
I don't know. I'm kind of a control freak. So there's a part of that from a quality control, because the creative and execution is a big part of what has made us successful. I think that makes us stand apart from a lot of our competitors, is just the quality of the stuff that we do.
Yeah,
So there is the part of when you're doing it in house, everybody's bought into the vision of what we're doing, and you can control that better. And
yeah,
so there is also the part of it too. So we are capable of doing everything that we send out. We have the ability to do it in-house because we need that, because there are times where we can't have that lag time of an outsourced provider, right? We need to be able to do it and turn it around tomorrow or whatever it is. So having that skill set. So I always want to be able to do it ourselves, but I want to have the option based on a case-by-case scenario of being able to use another partner, another outsourced provider, or whatever it is to facilitate it if it makes sense. And that having a good network allows an agency like ours to handle a big spike of business, because hiring the right people is a process. So you can't, the scalability of a good agency is tough. So you need to have
yeah,
ability to handle a big spike of business and then say, okay, now this is our new normal. So let's start hiring some people so that we can pull some of this back in-house if we want to.
Yeah.
yeah,
But so you need to have some good partners from that standpoint, so that you don't you have to turn away work necessarily.
yeah.
You can still take it and then use some resources that are, external of your organization.
So one quick thing, because I like the idea of hearing more about the way owners like yourself think about using contractors, just because you know everyone is kind of middle of that confusion, right? Where should I do? Like, where should I get the work done? Is it all in-house,
Yeah.
outside? But when you said, like, uh, making sure that you don't have to, you don't increase the load on your expense if you keep everything in-house, you have that flexibility, you have options to dial in, dial down if needed when
Mhm.
you don't have enough. What other uh, benefits that you see for yourself or your agency, where you have seen the value in working with contractors, be it anywhere, right? Doesn't have to be like if you are going offshore, yes, cost could be one thing, but if it is
Right.
near shore or even in North America, it could be just flexibility. So in your case, in the type of work that you do, where have you seen the most value in working with contractors?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit. For us, the ability to not say no to a project if we really want it and don't have the staffing, or we're committed to other
Yeah,
things,
Right.
yeah,
to be able to use those as a way to leverage. Competitiveness is a big part of it, right? It's like there are times that, hey, we want this project, in order to compete, we're going to need to use, some contract labor. I think another thing, there are things that are specialized. So for example, we don't do like app development.
yeah,
Our developers are really good, but we don't have a big team for that. My development team is 3.5 people, right?
yeah,
And so their time is usually focused on front end projects for our clients. So if we have a client and they need a mobile app or they need something of that nature, some technical expertise or some technological thing that we don't have staffing for, then that's the perfect scenario where you're going to use, an outsourced partner to help you facilitate that. Sometimes it's geographical too, right? You need boots on the ground to shoot a video or go take photos or do things, but they're not in your town, right?
Yeah.
So, just using resources in that way to be able to go accomplish the job in another area. But those are kind of the most common things that we do it. And also too, like, for example, I'll go back to the markup thing. Like we can do it. I could do it, right? It's time consuming. Right. It's low value, it's high value, but low, it's like no one's paying you a ton of money for that stuff. It's part of the project as the whole. It takes a lot of time to do it and do it right. And so we have all our styles and how it should look and all that kind of stuff. And then we use somebody that's all they do. Right.
Yeah.
So they're a specialist in that. So they do it really well. They know our system. We've worked well with them for years. So they turn it around quick and that's all they do. Right. Yeah. So there's that part that's a big benefit for us. And then it comes back and it looks exactly like if we were to do it ourselves because we worked out that relationship with them.
Yeah. Yesterday, it's funny, we were talking on this same topic with someone else. And we were, instead of benefits, we were talking about the horror stories. Like, what have you, like, tell us about the time when you were like tensed and frustrated and how you deal with those situations, especially working with outside vendors.
The hardest thing I would say the hardest thing with any outsourced provider, and this is near shore or offshore, right? There are some that are really good from a business owner standpoint of how they think about what they operate as a contractor, but most of them, like, there's the quality piece of it. And there's no intuitiveness and ownership of the projects. They are just checking off the boxes of I did this. They're not actually like if we had a project and then we were doing it, we'd say, you know what, it's probably better if they did it this way. And we need to have a conversation with the client and talk through a potential alternative solution to this, because this now that I'm into this, it's probably going to work better, right? Where like, that's a constant challenge that we've had, where it's just like, I'm just checking off the boxes. I did exactly what you said. And there's no creative thinking. No, hey, what do you think about this idea or this idea? Or how can we can make this better if we did this? And value add in the midst of it. And so what we found is, depending on culturally where the providers are, you have to kind of learn the systems to make that work really, really well. Right. And in some places it just has to be super systematic work. Like we want you to do this, and this, and that's the expectation, and everybody's great. Right. And so, I find that if you're you need somebody who's a little bit more involved, a little bit more creative, then those are usually, the one-offs that you're going to find through various, sources, Upwork or whatever, and then build a relationship with them. And you're like, and you got to go through a lot of them until you find the one that like, hey, I like the way they think and they get us and they're looking to try to provide value. And, so it makes me wonder, right. I know I love people who are trying to do their own thing and, and be entrepreneurial and, do contract work. And I think so, though, a lot of them end up out there doing that because they probably weren't very good in a office environment or working for somebody else, and so like they got to make a living. So they end up in that world. And so, like the vetting process, you just have to be patient and get through it. So you, like, when you find a group or a person that like, seems to work well for you and your organization, then, keep them busy because, they're hard to find.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, ask me. I mean, I've been in this business for so long, and I know how difficult it is to do this the right way. Anyways, we can go to the next. I can talk about this like for length and for hours. So we have to cover other things too. So
I want to touch on the subject real quick though, because when we got in this business, I think if I was to start a marketing agency all over again, I would probably build it differently because of the ability to do virtual work has improved so much over the last few years, and to
Right.
have remote teams, right?
Yeah.
So 15 years ago, remote teams were harder. There wasn't a lot of the best practices in place. And 30 years ago, when this agency first started, that wasn't even a thing, right? If you're not in the office, then you're not really, there's no opportunity. And
Yeah.
so I think an agency that starts now has a decided advantage over an agency that started 15 or 20 or 30 years ago, because of the way people are used to working. So
Yes.
yeah,
That's a great point. I mean, I
yeah,
can totally see that happening. Now people are more open, and because they have all these people at their disposal, right? They can pretty much do anything and everything, and one man company, right? They
right,
don't need to do like build a team, and like well, they
Pay
have
for an
time. They can
office.
take time,
Yeah.
right? They can
right,
start, you know. So yeah,
yeah.
that's
Yeah, somebody
cool.
who's really good at systems and managing people can have a VA, and they can have an
Yeah,
offshore team for doing their dev, can have a contract couple of designers and a couple contract videographers and photographers, and
yeah,
they can just sell the work and manage the work and have a pretty good business for themselves, and be a solar shop. There's weakness
yeah.
in that though, right? Go back to
Yes,
what I said before with the hit by a bus scenario, right? Like,
right.
that person isn't in the mix, then
Yeah,
their clients are not getting their needs met, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
So where you
yeah,
have an agency with people and redundancy and multiple owners or stakeholders within an organization, that if you go on vacation, your project doesn't stop, someone else just picks it up and runs with it, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
from a client's perspective, there's still some advantages and disadvantages to those two scenarios.
Right, right, right. Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, hey, I
Eh,
wanted to shift this a little bit. You've mentioned StoryBrand a couple times. I've heard of it. Um, I've heard of it. I think I saw a workbook sometime about it. I think I've been told I should read the book. What's your take?
Yeah.
What's your take? I mean, obviously you've done enough. You got certified in it to the point where it's
Yeah.
a part of your business. How would you explain it to?
Yeah. Let me give you
How
a
do you
little
explain it?
let me give you a little backstory. So a challenge with any business, and particularly with a creative agency, is um, everything that we do and everything that any agency does, whether it's creative or web development or whatever it is all a commodity, right? It's all a
Mm,
mhm.
commodity. You can buy it and sell it all day long. We're just talking about that. Let's just go to Upwork and we can buy anything we want, Fiverr and Upwork. But what business owners and our partners and our clients are looking for, it's not that. It's actually how you think, right? It's how
it
you
is.
think on their behalf that provides the value. And they're looking for relationships with people that think in a way that they like, right? That they
Yep.
align with. And so as we were building our company and going through this growth spurt, we realized that a lot of just there was just a lot of fragmentation amongst our own team of what do we do? How do we help people? We know that we're a creative agency when we do graphic design, we do web development, but just like, what's our philosophies behind marketing and things of that nature. And so I had my own, and my business partner was similar, but he kind of had his own. And so we were actually talking about, we need to build a framework that we can teach the team. So if we're not here, that our clients are all hearing the same things. It's not, we're not having that letdown in the how you think part of it, right? We're in a society
Yeah.
where we're all taught what to think. We're not taught how to think. And so we were really working on like, how can we help them all think, all of us to be on the same page as far as philosophically of how we approach marketing and messaging, particularly to help people sell. And so I think Google was listening to me because I saw an ad for the book, How to Build a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And so I grabbed the audio and like, wow, this is really great. I got the physical copy. And like, I was like, it was one of those things where I read it and I'm like, I know all these things. I talk about all these things to our clients. I just use different words and different ways to do it. And at the same point, I'm like, man, I'm an idiot that I didn't think of this first, because they've made this so, the framework's so simple, it seems dumb.
Right.
Using elements of story and how our brains are wired to connect with our own message, with our own story. And so it's super fascinating to me. And so my business partner was on vacation at the time, and I texted him and said, hey, download this book and listen to it on the airplane when you get home, because we're going to talk about it. And so for us, we read the book and we were like, hey, let's start implementing this internally. And so we started kind of implementing some of the processes internally, and then realized they had a certification and started exploring that. And so they have like they call it one of the elements of it is, being a guide and being the guide to your clients. And for example, most brands make themselves the hero. When they're not the hero, their customer is the hero, and their job is to help their customer achieve their goals and their story.
Right.
So to use Star Wars as an analogy, Luke is the hero and Yoda is the guide, right? That we actually need to be the Yoda to our clients and position ourselves with our messaging. And so they have a guide certification, but then they also had an agency certification. And so we were looking at the certification part, which allows us to use their framework and deploy their framework for our clients. If we did the guide as individuals, then that still means it's still stuck with Brian or I, right? Whoever's the guide. So we actually invested in the agency certification. And what that did was that allowed our entire team to be trained at the same time. So everybody got put on the same page at the same time. And it was the best thing we ever did. I mean, wow. It was a level up for a lot of our people. We had people who went to fancy design schools and with marketing degrees that basically said, this is the best. This is better than any education I ever got in college. This is more helpful and more informative than any education I ever got in college. So we're like, okay, that was worth it. And at the same time, it brought a lot of unity. We're all on the same page, quote unquote, reading from the same playbook to be able to help our clients. And so that certification has been a game changer for us. And not that the concepts most marketers probably know and do at some level, you see them out there. It was just the way it was put together for us. It helped our team. It helped our team, feel confident and take ownership of things. So I don't have to be in a discovery meeting if I don't want to. And I know that, any team member that's in there understands why we do what we do and how we think on behalf of our clients.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. Well, I feel like I've been drinking from the fire hose, kind of like having Audible on like 10x speed.
Yeah.
Great.
Like
book.
10 TED Talks all at once.
Yes, right. In different languages. My next question, who are you? Can you take us back in time? Little Michael Dave. Where'd you grow up? Did you always know you were going to be an entrepreneur?
I'm somebody who's always cared about his hair, making sure that was really, well kept.
Right.
I mean, I think I'm more of an entrepreneur that happened to I'm a creative person. I'm a songwriter. I like to write, it's like I've worked on a few movies over the years. I wrote a script this summer with a buddy of mine for a sitcom we're gonna try to pitch. I like doing creative things. And at the same time, I'm very business minded and entrepreneurial. I love leadership and entrepreneurial stuff. So I think part of being an entrepreneur is there's creation involved, right? There's an idea and a vision and how's it going to come about? And so that's the part that really gets me excited. And I'm definitely a big picture guy. I there was a book I read way back in the day called The Magic of Thinking Big. And that just the idea of just having big thoughts and big ideas, really can expand your possibilities. And maybe you never hit the big crazy idea, but you're moving places with that. And I have never been afraid to dive in. I mean, it's, I am definitely a leap before I look kind of person. I have to, sometimes look more than I do when I leap, just because I'm fearless in that kind of stuff. And so entrepreneurially, I've always just, had ideas and different things. I think I was around 10. I kind of, started getting more hey, I can turn these things into a business. I was hustling and pushing a mower around my neighborhood in the town I grew up in, mowing lawns for $2, $4, or $5, whatever I could get, and I used to use some of that money to buy a big jumbo bag of M&Ms, and then I would sell them to the neighbor kids,
really?
A variety of different things. One birthday, I wanted some boxing gloves because I grew up in the era of Sugar Ray Leonard and, Muhammad Ali, and boxing was a huge thing, pre-MMA days.
Right.
And I really, really loved boxing. And so I asked for boxing gloves for one birthday. And so I got two pairs of boxing gloves for my birthday. And so then me, and the way that I'm wired, I tell people I invented Fight Club because the neighborhood kids back in the 70s, I would charge them to basically entered boxing tournaments, and I got paid to watch the neighborhood kids beat each other up. Not very nice, but
You were like a fight promoter.
yeah. Needless to say, the neighborhood fight commission, aka all the moms and dads, they shut that thing down pretty quick.
The commissioner, they shut it down.
Yeah. So I've always, had ideas like that. A lot of times I was building ideas around just because I liked it, how can I get paid to do this? Like I got into paintball for a while, and so then I'd put on paintball tournaments.
What kind of a gun did you have?
Organize and put on paint. I was back in the day with like the Tipman Pro-Ams. And
Tipman, okay. I was a Spider guy.
Pre-auto cocker days when, like back when, you're not firing a wall of paint. It was actually more pump action, some of them.
Yeah.
So, but let's put together an event to be able to get paid or pay for my hobby doing this kind of stuff. So I've always been that way,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's out there where you guys are, but there's a company here. Well, there's Grubhub, which is now, but like there's a company called Entree Express. But in like 1986, 87, a buddy and I started a company called Grub Runners. And it was basically that concept, like you would call in, place an order, food would be delivered, but like pre-cell phone, pre-internet, like we were way ahead of our time. And because we're in a college town, we would just turn the business on and off. So when finals would come around and dead week, then we'd go to all the dorms and pass out flyers, and they would call our home number at our apartment, and we'd take their orders, and we'd go run to Burger King or McDonald's and go pick up their orders and charge a fee. It was so, I've always thought that way. And so spent some time in food service, spent some time doing some different businesses here and there. And then in the late 1990s is when I kind of got into the marketing kind of web space. And there's been a few iterations of it. And then over the years, there's been a few other businesses involved. But I like being in the marketing business because it ties a lot of the things how God has made me and how he's wired me, in the sense of the creative part of it, the business part of it, the entrepreneurial part of it. I love leadership stuff. So like being a marketing agency, the fact that we get to be around so many different businesses and leaders and their strategies, we get an education. We learn so much from working with our partners and just being in the space. It's super, super fun. And, my business partner and I, we own another company, an e-commerce company together, which was a client. We helped them start the business 13 years ago. And then we bought them like 4 years ago.
No kidding.
And, we have a couple situations where we really liked what they were doing, and we traded services for equity. So we have equity in a couple of companies, just, as an agency. And, so
not many agencies do that. It comes back to your entrepreneur mindset, right? I mean, you're not running just one business. You want to diversify.
Any agency owners out there are either going to agree or cringe when I say this, but as an agency, our business model sucks. It's a terrible business model, right? Because it's fun, but it's, for the most part, there's not a lot of reoccurring revenue, right? You still have to build it. You have to sell it, build it, sell it, build it, sell it, build it, sell it, build it over and over and over and over again. Right. So from a, reoccurring, kind of
sustainable,
right. Passive income scenario, right? Like there, you can do it. It's just harder to do in our industry,
Bit of a grind, right?
Hosting is a way to create passive income, and you can build up a pretty good hosting business over time, but that's an overtime thing. It's good, but still there's just a lot of, you have to really be thinking about, how do we take our knowledge and skills as marketers and generate additional revenue flow? And so like owning an e-commerce company for us has been great. We were able to buy a company that we knew a ton about. We built the brand, we launched it, we were maintaining the website. We had to learn a few other things about it, but having that company's been another source of income for us. And it also has really helped us help our e-commerce clients, because now we're in it. It's our own money that we're spending, and so we use it as a place to sometimes experiment with things that before we try this on our clients, let's try this on ourselves. So there's some of that. So, but yeah, it just seems like a natural outflow. And we're always looking for opportunities, even buying other businesses if they make sense, you know.
Yeah.
So what is exciting you for in about the future now? Like, looking at all of this right now, what do you think? Where does this go from here for you guys?
Yeah, so you asked me this in 2020. Okay, can I take this?
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always tell people 2020 was like, everybody's excited about 2020. Something about it, right? Like I felt like the excitement level about 2020 was higher than any other year. Like everybody was like, hey, we're gonna have this 2020 vision. Like they're making all these terrible puns about it, the whole thing.
Right.
And then like 2020 comes along and just slugs us in the face.
Dog shit.
Right? And just like, take this, so yeah, for us, I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I even think about, if you historically look at us as a people, right, and just we're resilient. This has been a hard year for so many people in a lot of ways, and regardless of what side of the political fence or the social fence you're on, it's democracy is always going to be messy. But we always seem to a way to make it through. Michael Hyatt made this great quote. I saw it on social media the other day. He said, we've survived 100% of the presidents that we've elected. And we'll survive whatever this, we'll survive this. I think that, I'm from looking at some data and like just kind of polling different people, different clients and stuff. One of the things that I'm excited about in 2021 is that, a lot of businesses have money, right? If you look at some of the data, like the companies that have positioned themselves well, they're more profitable because they've cut their expenses and they have more cash than they've ever had before. They're sitting on it, right? And there's a lot of new businesses that have started up during this time. There's the COVID entrepreneurs that are like, have all these new ideas. I think there's tons of opportunity. Then there will be tons of opportunity for those agencies that are prepared to kind of roll with it in 2021. I don't know exactly the date, but I just feel like, even if COVID continues, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out how to continue to do life and to grow our businesses and generate revenue. We just all have to think different, and pivot. Right. And that word's really worn out, but it really is. If you're a business owner, you've pivoted 10,000 times, right? Because you have an employee leave, you got to pivot, right? You've got a new client comes in, you've got to pivot, you've got to, this or that. You're constantly having to think and pivot. And so I did a little thing with pivot. I turned it into an acrostic. So pivot's about getting perspective. That's the P. Like really stepping and taking a look at what's going on instead of just having this narrow view. We tend to come up to the wall and look right at it instead of like, okay, what's over it, what's under it, what's around it, like, how to get over. The I is just about innovation, right? When we're up against an obstacle, that's the place where we need to think big, right? Yeah. There should be nothing off the table. We should be able to flip over every single rock and throw out the idea of, we have always done business this way. That is the worst thing you can ever say, right? Totally. It's like, what does this make possible should be the question we ask. What does this make possible? And then V is really just having that vision of what your business is going to look like on the other side of COVID or at the end of 2021, like a picture of who you want to be, and where that's going to go, and be able to articulate and cast that vision. And then O is really about, there are lots of opportunities within this scenario we tend to want to dwell and live on the negative things, but it's like there are tons of opportunities that exist and we need to find what those are for our particular situation, right? It's an opportunity to get better at operations or systemize or tweak our product offering or adjust our pricing, or we've been wanting to do webinars for forever and now everybody's wanting to do webinars. One of the opportunities that's come out of this is that a lot of companies have struggled with the thought of, can we have a remote workforce and still be effective? Well, guess what? You just got a test run and you just got a forced test run on whether your team could actually do it or not. And now you can see it. Maybe you don't need the big office space that you have. You could have half the space and have a flex team that's in and out of the office, have lower overhead, be more flexible for the future, right? It's just being able to think about it. And then that leads me to the T, and the T is really about team, that we need to build a good team around us when we're pivoting, whether that's the team that works for us, that's that team of mentors and advisors. Like if you're a business leader and you don't have a group of an advisory team, so to speak, of guys or gals and people that, you know, have experience in certain categories that are farther down the road, you know, that you can call and say, hey man, I'm trying to process this. Can you help me think through it? Then you're missing out on a big opportunity. But there was one of those rabbit holes I told you I would go down early on the conversation, but you know, like that thinking about pivot in the right way, even though we're sick of that word, but that's really to me what that means. And we need to do that constantly. It's not just a COVID thing. That is a life thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. That I can totally resonate with that. In our business, we have done that so many times. People keep telling us to stay on track, but doesn't happen. I mean, we keep changing directions.
Yeah.
For for good or for worse. I mean, we are here, we are successful, and I think that is one of the main reasons why I think pivoting is so important in your in your career.
Yeah,
So
you
I
got to be
totally
willing
agree
to be
with that.
agile, resilient, and agile if you're going to be successful and happy in life. Period. Right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
my grandfather had this great saying. He said, "Life is fair because it's unfair to everybody." And you know, because it is. It's we all. You know, it's like we all have. It's hard. Life is hard, but we get to choose our attitude upon how we navigate life. Right? We can let it beat us down and be miserable about it, or we can choose to have the right attitude and look for the opportunities and look for the places we can grow out of it.
yeah,
Man.
yeah.
Well, dude, this has been just like a trip, just hanging out with you and chatting. Where can people connect with you if they want to reach out and get more of this magic?
Yeah, I'm on all the socials.
Okay.
Yeah,
All the
LinkedIn's probably
things.
from a business standpoint, LinkedIn's where I spend the most time. So obviously
Okay.
LinkedIn, it's Michael Coogan on LinkedIn, should be able to find me. I'm at Michael Coogan on Instagram. If you're interested in some of more of my hobby stuff, end up there. Fly fishing, the music related things end up on the Instagram. And then as far as the company, MC2, so mc2design.com is the website. And then we're at MC2 Design, MC2 Design on Instagram and MC2 Design on Facebook. I think we're at MC2 Design group on Twitter as well. So you can find us in all those places. And go to the website, all the social stuff's at the bottom of that homepage.
Perfect, man. Perfect.
Great.
Well, dude, thanks again for coming and just hanging out with us. Man, this has been awesome.
Thanks, man. It's fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, for everyone out there listening, this has been Agencies That Build. We will catch you all next time.